Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hi, and welcome back. So, do you want to hear about one of my worst weeks ever? Okay, so it was the week of Halloween 2011. It felt like my whole world came crashing down that week. It was the first time that my husband had went and talked with a divorce lawyer. I had had a major falling out with my best friend. And then later on that week, while my husband was in Vegas for the weekend, when I walked into my kitchen, there was water coming up in between the tiles. Not knowing what to do, I called him and described the situation, and my husband said to me, "What do you want me to do about it? I'm in Vegas." Well, I knew that was the logical response. I had no idea how to figure out and solve the problem. And given what had gone on earlier in the week, I just didn't have the bandwidth to begin to know how to fix this. So I ended up calling a plumber, and they determined that my dishwasher had flooded. And it caused such severe water damage that within about 24 hours, my entire kitchen was gutted down to the concrete slabs. Everything was gone. And it just felt like everything I knew to be certain, all the pillars that had held me up, my friendship, my home, my marriage, literally all came down in a matter of about 3 days. And I had 2 young daughters I had to take care of. I didn't have the flexibility, availability, or freedom for a nervous breakdown, which is what I was really feeling inside of me. And as an aside, the irony is that almost a year earlier, we had joked about our dishwasher flooding. And that's actually one of my favorite stories that I'll share with you soon. I've got so many stories that I will share them in all due time. But actually, at the point of my kitchen flooding, my husband and I had been talking about separation. And in an effort to make sense of my life, I was super open to receiving signs from the universe. And at that time, the clear meaning of the kitchen flooding was to mean I was supposed to rebuild and not replace. So it was not the time for us to separate. We knew we could not have a trial separation while our house was in shambles. So we took the time to rebuild our kitchen and stay grounded. Anyhow, back to that week. Thank God I had already had a mindfulness practice at this point. I had already had a connection to my breath, because when everything was falling apart around me, my breath is the one thing that I could actually control and rely on to get me from one moment to the next. I couldn't begin to think about the next stages. I just had to get through what was. In fact, Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's the grandfather of mindfulness in the Western world, has a great quote. He says, "As long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you." I now understood this on a visceral level. So prior to that, I had already been teaching mindfulness in schools, and I had been trained in teaching the how and the what of mindfulness. But where I felt my training came up short was in the why of mindfulness. And I really realized I had to teach kids, why are we even doing this? Why does this matter? One day, I went around to every classroom. And remember, this was a school K through 8. And I asked all the kids, if you've been breathing from the moment you're born to the moment you die, why should we practice this? And one brilliant 9-year-old girl, she was in 3rd grade, and she said, "I imagine we practice our breathing for the same reason we have a fire drill. We have a fire drill so we know what to do in case of an emergency. And I imagine we practice our breathing so we know how to use it when we need it." Oh my God, she nailed it. I literally was in tears with her response. Yes, this is why we do this. We practice our breathing so we know how to use it when we need it. We don't wait for an emergency to plan for the emergency. And connecting with our breath allows us to prepare for whatever it is we need to get through. Because remember, when we're in the heightened moment of angst or stress or overwhelm, emotional frustration, anxiety, anger, whatever it is, it's really difficult to access your breath. When your emotions take over, it shuts down the part of your brain where you access your tools. In fact, I'll talk more about this in the next episode, the connection of our emotional brain and our executive functioning. It's actually really, really, really important to understand. But anyhow, if we've already established a connection and a baseline for accessing our breath, the easier it will be in the moment to get to it when you really need it. And like I said, thank God I had already had that baseline. Otherwise, I could promise you, in that week, I would have completely lost my shit. But my breath grounded me. It showed me I could get through anything, one breath at a time. And if I could get through one breath, then I could get through two. If I could get through 2 breaths, then I could get through 10. And minute by minute, moment by moment, I could survive whatever it was that was coming my way. So, how can you start using your breath to your benefit? Well, like I've said before, start small. I think I mentioned in an earlier episode to find times throughout your day where you can consciously connect with your breath. And it doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, honestly, if you start with 3 conscious deep breaths in and 3 deep breaths out, that is a wonderful place to begin and to develop this baseline of connection to your breath. And in fact, the exhale is a little more important than the inhale. We tend to take a lot in, but we don't let a lot go. And the longer your exhale, that will activate your rest and digest part of your brain, which is the opposite of the fight, flight, freeze part of your brain, which is activated when you're stressed or triggered. Now, I often get 2 main questions when it comes to our breath. The first one is there a right way and a wrong way to breathe? And the second question I often get is, how do I teach this to my kids? Because I know when you tell a kid to take a deep breath, first of all, they likely will get frustrated and annoyed at you for telling them this. In fact, my daughter will often roll her eyes and say to me, well, Mom, I'm thinking about breathing, but we actually have to do it to receive the benefit. The other thing about kids taking a breath, oftentimes when you say take a deep breath, they likely will end up sounding like Darth Vader, and that is not the kind of calming breath that we want to help them develop. Okay, so we'll get to the kids in a second. So for the first question, technically, yes, there is a right way and a wrong way to breathe. But if you're just beginning, I don't want you to focus on it because it'll likely distract you and get you out of the benefit you're trying to receive. Eventually, you'll get there. And I will talk a moment in what that right way and wrong way is. But in fact, once I was on a 5-day silent meditation retreat, which I'll have to tell you about sometime. That was an interesting, very challenging experience. But I had so much trouble during that meditation retreat accessing a deeper part of me. And in talking with one of the teachers, I discovered it's because I'd actually been breathing wrong. And therefore, I was cutting myself off to myself. But again, I'll share with you real quick. The right way to breathe is to actually, on the inhale, expand your diaphragm, and on the exhale, contract it. Now, this was really confusing to me, and I, for a long time, sat there so focused on, am I exhaling out, and am I contracting or expanding? And it took away my focus of my attention to get the breath to be a calming piece. And so for right now, let's not focus on Are you expanding or contracting on the inhale, on the exhale? Just be certain in knowing you're already breathing. Because again, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, you have 100% success rate in breathing. So here's how I tell people to start. Just notice where you're feeling your breath in your body. Just simply notice it. Again, your breath is breathing through you. It's already doing it. We just want to bring awareness to it so we can use it for our benefit of calming our brain, calming our body, and getting us back into the present moment and our executive functioning back to work. So maybe you notice your shoulders rise up and down when you're breathing, or your chest go in and out. Or maybe you are noticing your diaphragm expand and contract. Or perhaps you're even noticing the air pass through the tip of your nose. Wherever it is you are noticing your breath, see if you can keep it in your mind's attention by saying the words breathing in and breathing out inside your mind. You could even try counting your inhalations and exhalations. So that would sound like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the in-breath, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the out-breath. If you're saying the words breathing in, breathing out, or even counting your inhalations or exhalations, your mind has a more difficult time wandering off on a thought at the same time as saying the words breathing in, breathing out. So you might as well say the words that connect you back to your breath. It keeps that anchor for that distraction and that overwhelm, that tendency that we normally have. Okay, so for kids, I recommend a few different things. And actually, these will work for you as well. I think I may have mentioned before, I'm a pretty visual person. And this is a really beautiful way to teach kids to connect with their breath. So give them a visual. Have them imagine breathing in something, the smell of something they love. So maybe smelling a freshly baked batch of chocolate chip cookies, or a fresh pie, or the smell of a fresh spring day, or, I love the smell of rain on pavement. I love that smell. Or even the smell of a beautiful rose. So if they smell something in, it's going to be a nice slow inhalation through the nose. And then the visual for the exhale is to exhale out like you're blowing bubbles. You know, like those little bubble wands we all had as kids. Well, if you dip the wand into the bubble jar and you blow really quickly, it's going to pop the bubble. But if you exhale out slowly, then that bubble is going to grow really big. And if you're careful, it might even float right off that bubble wand and really float across the room or outside, wherever you are. Kids love that. So even actually having a bubble bottle near you and using that practice for them to use the bubbles whenever they are feeling overwhelmed, it's a really great habit to get into. And bubbles are super fun. I mean, who doesn't love bubbles? Another tactic that kids really enjoy is helpful at bedtime. You know, bedtime is a time where a lot of nightmares or fears or anxieties or worries tend to come up. So if you can have your kids begin to connect with their breath at night, it'll help calm them down, allowing them for deeper sleep. So have them lie on their back and place a small stuffed animal on their tummy, like a little beanie baby or something, and just tell them to watch and see what happens. Well, so when they're observing their stuffed animal, what they'll see is that it's moving up and down. Why is that? Because they're breathing. So it's a way of helping them connect with their breath without feeling like they have to do anything different. The key is to increase awareness of it rather than change or alter it. And remember, I mentioned a few minutes ago, you have a 100% success rate of breathing. You have already gotten through everything you didn't think you could get through. So remember, it's always there for you to access. In fact, when I'm leading meditation class, and I'm ending it, and I have people set an intention and use their breath as a vehicle to access that intention, I often remind them that you can breathe wherever you are, no matter what you're doing. No one even has to know that this is the practice that you're accessing in that moment. So don't underestimate the power of your breath. And, back to my horrible week of 2011, or just the complete disaster of having my house being torn apart at literally almost a moment's notice, that breath was the only thing that grounded me. Because I'm a planner and I wanted to be able to plan and to know what was coming next and be able to just get through it. But feeling like I was completely knocked off my rocker, it was the only thing I had in that moment. So like I said, I am so grateful that I had that as a practice, because without that, it would have been an even big disaster than it was. So for your prompt today, just be curious. I know I've prompted you before in earlier episodes to look for moments in your day to slow down, connect with your breath. But now I want you to see if you can actually use it when you need it. Maybe if you're entering into a difficult conversation with someone or a challenge at work or with your kids, just pause and breathe and see how your response is different to what you're going to be able to do next. When my kids were young, and I'll talk a lot more about this, I'll have many parenting episodes, but when my kids were young, I would actually say out loud to them, you know what, you guys, I'm beginning to get really frustrated, and I'm just going to stop and take a few deep breaths because I don't want to say anything I don't mean. And I would pause in front of them and consciously and audibly have a couple inhales and a few exhales, and it just calmed me down to be able to better deal with whatever was going on. And here's the other thing I didn't mention about kids, is they often have a really hard time accessing their breath, which is why it's even more important to help them have a baseline for it. Because I can tell you, if you have a tantruming or upset child, one of the very last things they're going to do when you say take a deep breath and calm down is to actually take a deep breath and calm down. But if they're that overwhelmed that they can't access it, you can begin to breathe deeply in their presence. And through your breath and you calming down, you can become like a surrogate breather for them, and it can start to shift the energy. Just notice the people around you and the people's energy. Someone who's very angst-filled and anxious and has really hyper energy is likely going to make you feel more anxious and angst-filled and hyper. But if the person you're with is calm and has a more relaxed energy about them, then you're going to feel better in their presence. So think about that if you have children and they're really getting overwhelmed and having a tantrum, you can use your breath to help calm them down. And I have so much more to say on the whole parenting thing, so we'll get there another time. So I hope that you found this helpful, and just remember, your breath is always there. And like that brilliant 9-year-old girl said, we need to be able to practice it so we can use it when we need it. So next time you're stressed or overwhelmed, remember to breathe. You'll calm your brain, you'll calm your body, and then you'll be able to navigate through whatever is arising with greater skill and ease. So just remember, take a minute and just breathe. See you guys next time. Bye.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.